Hi, everyone. I'm David Aragona, and this is the December 21st edition of Horses to Watch, where I tell you about some horses to follow and potentially bet back on the New York circuit and walk you through some of my trip handicapping process. Well, we didn't record an episode last week because I was a little bit light on content for the week preceding this one, just not a whole lot going on with trips. That was not the case on this past week. It was a shortened week with losing that Thursday card due to a snow day, so just Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but among those 3 days, there were plenty of trips to choose from, a track bias situation, some very fast paces, some horses who got into trouble. Frankly, I had trouble narrowing it down to just 4 videos to talk about, but 4 is what I settled on, and we're going to launch directly into a race from this past Friday to start things off. It was the 7th race on the Friday card, a $16,000 claimer, non-winners of 2 lifetime going 6 furlongs, and I want to focus on 2 horses in this race, the number 1 Shandian and the number 8 Cool Boy. Let's break these horses from the gate, and one thing you'll notice right from the start is that there's just a crush of horses sending for the lead here. There was a ton of speed on paper, and it really did play out that way on the racetrack, as you've got about 6 or 7 horses trying to get a forward position up on the front end. And the number 1 Shandian, who is one of those horses I want to talk about, he is arguably the fastest horse in the early going for about the first eighth of a mile. But after that, the number 10 Inksblots, who is really a quarter horse in thoroughbreds clothing. I mean, this horse just has an electrifying turn of foot for the opening quarter mile of a race, and Shandian really had no chance to go with him once they get past that opening quarter and just lets Inksblots go on with it. 22 4/5, an extremely fast opening quarter considering how slow and demanding this main track was at Aqueduct last week. So Shandian takes back off that horse on the rail, and you'll notice Cool Boy, the number 8, in about 5th or 6th place now in that second flight of runners behind Shandian. Now we're going to watch what happens right here as the horses come past the quarter pole. Shandian's rider is trying to go inside of Inksblots, and Cool Boy's rider is trying to split horses about 3 or 4 wide there. They both get into trouble. Cool Boy has to steady for about a 16th of a mile here as he loses all his momentum with nowhere to go in between those 2 tiring runners. And Shandian, well, you didn't want to be trying to go inside of Inksblots because that horse is known to be a quitter, and he just stopped, and he lost all his momentum in that final eighth of a mile. Now, perhaps Shandian was finishing nowhere because he does lose this race by about 20 lengths, but Cool Boy, you see, he's going to just miss finishing 3rd here. He actually finished on again and regathered that momentum after getting stopped at the quarter pole. So Cool Boy, I thought, ran pretty well, all things considered. Shandian, we don't really know because he had that momentum stopped, and he was also part of that extremely fast pace that fell apart. Now, these horses were both making their first starts off the claim for new trainers. Shandian was going out for Rudy Rodriguez, and Cool Boy was going out for Chris Engelhardt. I think it's pretty clear that Cool Boy, who was previously with a low percentage barn, that he's taken a big step forward for Chris Engelhardt, even though the speed figure might not suggest that. So I'd expect even better from him next time. And Shandian, I think it remains to be seen because we didn't get a true line on where he is for Rudy Rodriguez in this race, given that trip. So he's another horse that, even though this was a poor performance, I think he deserves another shot. Let's move on to Saturday's card at Aqueduct. One race to talk about from this day, though I could have chosen more because there was a pretty intense rail bias on Saturday and even Sunday, arguably, at Aqueduct. But it was pretty obvious on Saturday. A lot of wire-to-wire winners, mostly horses that rode the rail the entire way. We're going to talk about one race from Saturday, though, that I think really solidifies the fact that the rail was biased. That was the 6th race, the optional claiming 62,000, non-winners of 2 other than going 6.5 furlongs. And I want to focus on the number 12, Inter Miami. Let's break these horses from the gate. And this is a race that, again, is going to feature a pretty honest pace because we've got, kind of like Inksblots, another one of these horses that really can run off in the first quarter, and that's the number 1 Chateau. He's just a rocket ship for the first really 4 furlongs of a race, and he's going to make the lead here and really force the others to go much faster than they ordinarily would want to in any race because he just sets some blazing paces. And Inter Miami, the number 12, he is one of those horses that in normal circumstances would want to be on the lead or at least contesting the pace, but he just can't quite keep up with Chateau in the early going. Now, I want to note here that the 2 horses who finished 1st and 2nd in this race are that number 1 Chateau and the number 2 Mitres Porciento, who was stalking right in behind Chateau. And both of these horses ride the rail for the entirety of their trips. Well, the number 2 Mitres Porciento, until the very end of the race, he has to come off the rail to go around Chateau. But look at where Inter Miami is at this point. He is 4 wide all the way on the far turn, losing significant ground. And if you watched all the races on Saturday, you routinely saw horses that were getting this kind of 4 wide trip just completely pack it in at the top of the stretch and finish nowhere. But I think it's a real credit to Inter Miami that he never gives up in this race. He's trying to make up ground here on the stretch. There's a horse closing outside of him, and he's going to keep that horse at bay and continue trying to make up ground on this second place finisher, Chateau. Now, Chateau is stopping because that's what he does, but look at Inter Miami in relation to horses like Cost Basis, who is just too wide, and the outside horse is closing. He's finishing on arguably better than them and just misses second here, despite that 4-wide trip. Inter Miami is a horse that looked a little bit slower coming into this race, but his prior start at Parks was by far the best of his career. His trainer, Juan Carlos Guerrero, typically ships to Naira with some intention. His horses generally show up on this circuit, and this one really did. Arguably could have won this race with a better trip, and I think he's one that's just doing great right now. He's in excellent form, and if he comes back to Naira or shows up anywhere else in the coming months, I think he's a horse you have to take very seriously. Let's now move on to Sunday's card at Aqueduct, and I want to talk about two races from this Sunday card. They're both maiden special weights for the 2-year-olds, so we're going to talk about some inexperienced horses. Before we dive into those, though, I just want to mention the track bias situation on Sunday. I know that there's some doubt in some people's minds that the track was still as biased as it was on Saturday, because, as I said, Saturday it was fairly obvious, a lot of gate-to-wire winners on the rail. On Sunday, we saw, I think, a lot of riders reacting to what happened on Saturday, so there were some faster paces, some riders trying to get that rail trip, but having to go way too fast to do it. And when you see those fast paces, even with the rail bias, it can force races to collapse sometimes. And we're going to talk about one race up next where that happened. That's the 4th race on Sunday. This one's going a mile, as I said, for the 2-year-olds, a maiden special weight event. Let's break these horses from the gate, and I want to focus on the number 7, Nepotism. Now, there's a horse all the way on the outside, the number 9, Rugged Union, who is just going to be dead set on getting to the front here. His rider really is getting after him to set an honest pace here, because he's trying to cross all the way over to the rail from that outside post position. I believe that's Kendrick Carmouche on him, and Carmouche is always aware of these track bias situations, so he's trying to take advantage of it. But what happens here is Nepotism, who actually breaks well. He did not break well in his debut, his one start prior to this. He is trying to run after Rugged Union in the early going, and this pace just really heats up as they're moving down the backstretch. The opening quarter goes up in 23-1. They go the half mile in 46-2. This track was extremely slow and dead and tiring this entire weekend, Saturday and Sunday. This is just a blistering pace over the kind of surface that we saw. And it's no surprise that these horses, most of them that are up towards the front end, are just going to be completely out of gas by the time these horses get to the top of the stretch. And you can see even right here, of the two horses battling for the lead, the number 9 Rugged Union, he's already under the whip, just trying to stay up with this pace. And Nepotism, who's stalking to the outside, he's never on the rail in this race. He's 2 to 3 wide on the backstretch, now 2 wide on the far turn. He's taking over the lead here, but getting a challenge from the outside by Repo Rocks, who is 3 wide in this race, was a little farther off that pace. But once Nepotism's rider, Manny Franco, gets into him, he's actually going to turn away this challenge from Repo Rocks and only really get reeled in by the closers in this race. Now, this is one of those races that might lead some to believe that the track was not as biased as it was on Saturday, because you do see down the center of the track, here comes the number 4 Overtook, and he's going to overtake them all and go on to a pretty easy victory here. But he was one of these horses that was far back in the early going, was actually on the rail on the backstretch before angling out for the stretch drive. So he runs these horses down, but took advantage of that extremely fast pace in doing so. Whereas Nepotism, he turned back multiple challenges in the early going, was the only horse that was involved in that pace that was anywhere in the mix at the finish. So I think he ran much better than it seems, because you saw that final time go up 140 and change for the mile. That means they went that opening half mile in 46-2, and the second half mile of the race in nearly 54 seconds. So just an extreme deterioration of the pace as these horses went through the stretch. So I think a real credit to Nepotism that he was able to hang on to third. Only got a 61 buyer in this race compared to the 60 he got in his debut, but I think it was deceptively a big step forward for this horse, and I expect to see a much better effort in a fairer pace situation next time out. The other race from Sunday I want to talk about is the 6th race on the card. This one's a maiden special weight for the 2-year-old fillies going 6 furlongs. And there are 2 first-time starters in this race that I want to highlight, though. As we break these horses from the gate, there are going to be many trips in this race, and you can even look for your own, because there are horses that I won't even talk about that might be worth betting back, among them the number 4, who breaks slowly there. But I want to focus on the number 5 Elevator Shaft, who right here you see she stumbles a little bit, gets squeezed back between horses, and just a crush of horses coming over at the start. And also the number 9, One Glamorous Gal, who currently is up close stalking the pace here. Now, the number 8, who was a well-meant firster for Wesley Ward, she's going to make the lead here and get over to the inside. And as we saw on Saturday and to a lesser extent on Sunday, horses that got this trip on the rail in the lead, they're typically pretty dangerous, especially when they're favorites like this horse is. But notice the number 9, Our One Glamorous Gal. She's stalking outside of this horse in the 2 to 3 path, is never on the rail at any point in this race, and she's going to issue a serious challenge to this horse around the far turn, and she never stops trying even into the stretch. Meanwhile, look at the number 5, Elevator Shaft. She was at the back of the pack after getting steadied at the start, and now here she comes making this blitz on the far turn outside of horses. She's now there on the 4 path, coming around horses into 4th place here, where the number 9, One Glamorous Gal, she starts the tail off a little bit, having exerted herself chasing that horse in the 2 to 3 path on the far turn. But Elevator Shaft, the number 5 horse, she's going to continue to sustain this early move that she made on the far turn into deep stretch here. Now, she doesn't quite get there, but she never stops trying in this race. She's ultimately going to get up for 3rd. There was a horse closing outside of her late. That one ran well too, a first-time starter for Jonathan Thomas, but that horse was picking up some pieces at the end, or I should say Rob Atras was the number 2, the trainer of the number 2 horse. But Elevator Shaft, I thought, due to the trouble at the start and the fact that she made that premature move while doing it very wide on the far turn, I think she's definitely one that you want to pay attention to as she makes her second start for Brittany Russell. And the number 9, One Glamorous Gal, who failed to finish about 5th or 6th there. She was not really competitive at the end of this race, but given the circumstances, chasing outside the entire way, kind of like Inter Miami in that allowance race from Saturday, I think she's one that you want to pay attention to in her second start because she didn't take a lot of money for George Weaver, but I think she showed a little bit of ability, and she's one with a more fair racetrack next time. She could have a big say in the outcome. Well, those are all the horses to watch for this week. Remember, if you want to follow these horses moving forward, you can add them to your DRF watch mail on DRF.com. You can make a list of all these horses and get email notifications when they run back or they work or they have results. That's how I like to follow these horses in the future when they make their subsequent starts. Well, thanks for tuning in this week. There won't be an episode next Wednesday because we'll have a little bit of a holiday break to deal with, but I'll look to get some more episodes of Horses to Watch going in the new year. So I hope you all have a nice holiday and look for some more episodes of Horses to Watch in 2021.